Here we are on a bright Saturday morning. It's cold. You can see my breath. I'm going to make a few ox shoes this morning. I'm going to show you how to make the blanks, and then we'll do the punching the holes and turning up the corks later. So you see I have a forge here, and I have a couple irons in there. We're going to make 5-inch shoes. So the irons are in the fire heating up. I have a drop hammer or a trip hammer here. Got a head onto it. It's the right shape for beating out shoes. It's just an old anvil with its horn cut off on a block of wood that's under the ground. And this was a homemade device. We have our anvil here with our hammer. This is a 3-pound hammer. And we also have a foot vise here. The foot vise has a little contraption into it that I use to measure out my shoes. You can see that 7 sizes of shoes will fit most oxen from a young age to old age. This one here is for 5.5, 5 1/4, 5, 4 3/4, 4.5, 4 1/4, and 4. So I measure the distance between here and there, and I'll show you later how that's done. You need some surface, some edge to measure your shoes by, so that when you cut them off they're all going to be consistent when they're done. This is a 4-inch anvil. You can use that. You can use the distance between here and the end of the horn. You can do all sorts of surfaces to measure shoes. I use this device. This was created by a blacksmith who was here before me and taught me a lot about shoes. So we'll get started on beating out the blanks, and I'll show you the different steps and explain each step as I go. For making 5-inch shoes and anything larger, I use 5/16 thick mild steel, and it is 1.5 inches wide. If I was making anything below 4 1/4, I would use 1 inch. Anything in between, I use 1 1/4 iron. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to beat down this corner right here and kind of beat it to that shape there like that. First step. As I beat this down, I want to keep the same thickness. So when I hit here a few times, it's going to swell. Again, tap like that, bring it down flat. So there's your first step. Shape it like that. And then the next step is you're going to put it over the horn and put a notch in it. I'm doing 2 shoes at a time. Again, you want that shape like that. Next thing is we're going to put it on the horn here, create our notch, and bend the outside of the shoe to the top shape. So, put it on the horn in the A position. You can do it this way as well. You can put the notch. I tend to put the notch this way. And as you're beating on the end of the horn, you want to keep it straight. You can see how the notch is starting to take place. So once you get that notch shaped into it like that, you're going to go to the next step, which is put it over the edge of the anvil, create a crease in the shoe blade. Again, we have another one. So, we're going to make some 5-inch shoes today. First thing I have my iron is 5/16, 1 inch for 4 1/4 and below, 1 1/4 inch for 4 1/2, 4 3/4, and 5, or 1 1/2 for 5 and above. First thing we're going to do is kind of snipe the corner off like that, and I'll show you that step, and I'm going to show you each step at a time so you know exactly how to make ox shoes. It's important to keep the same thickness. As you drive it down, it's going to get thicker, but you got to keep the same thickness as the original. So there, you snipe it down, sort of like that. Now the next step is I'm going to take and put it on the horn, about 2 inches or so away from the end. You can also do it this way if you wish, but we're going to kind of make a groove in the shoe and make a curve of the shoe at the same time. So you see I have the curve, and I also have the little groove in there. Again, it's important to keep it at the same thickness. And next, what we're going to do is put it over the edge of the anvil here and make a crease across here on the underside. Once that's done, we'll bring it back to this corner and put another crease on the underside this way. That will be your front cork. Also, if you want your inside groove to be small and deep, put it at the very end of the horn. If you want it to be larger and shallower, bring it towards the middle of the horn. So, same thing. Put it over the edge of the anvil, create that ridge at the bottom. Also, you're going to bring it back to this edge, and there's your front cork. So there's the crease across here and the crease across there. Now you're just going to take and fix it up a little bit. It's nice and flat, same thickness. And you got a little bit of a curve. Same thing here. Bring it over here to this edge. There's your front cork. Switch your shoe up so it looks nice. You have this part of the shoe done. Now we're going to put it in the trip hammer and beat out the back part and the sole of the shoe. Also, each step I showed you can be done one at a time until you get used to it, and then you can do all these steps in one heat. Now I'm going to show you the whole process in one heat of how to form the front of the shoe. Very important to have an anvil with nice square edges when you're making shoes. So, there's the front of the shoe made in one step. Next step is to go on to the trip hammer and beat out the body of the shoe. Again, it's important to have an anvil with nice straight edges. If you find that your edges are getting a little beat up, you can always take the hammer. Keep that edge nice and square. In my opinion, an anvil with those square edges makes a good boat anchor, but it's about it. Okay, here we are on our tip hammer. I'm going to ram it up against our guide fence that I have. I'm making 5-inch shoes, so I have the guide fence set for that. What I'm doing is beating out the curve, and I'm also beating out the inside of the shoe. on the tip hammer, I would generally take the hammer and just make sure that that curve is nice and uniform. I'll beat down my edges a little bit. And there I have my shoe blade. Another shoe blank. I have this device set up for 7 sizes: 5.5, 5.25, 5, 4 3/4, 4.5, 4 1/4, and 4 inch. Those 7 sizes will fit most socks and that we pair of shoes. You need some sort of spot here where you can measure your distances. This was made by a former blacksmith. He was good enough to let me use it. You can use the width of the foot vise, you can use the width of the anvil, you can put marks on the anvil, but you have to know where to cut the shoes off, cut the blanks off, so that they're consistent for 5-inch shoes. So we'll just insert a cut-off area in the anvil, make our measurements. There's a blank. The next step is to put it back in the fire and put the nail holes in and turn the cork shot. one blank. I make 16 blanks down the side and then put them back in the fire to punch the hole, turn the corks up. Here are two ox shoes. I just want to show you the difference between a hind shoe and a front shoe. You can see this one here has a nice uniform curve all the way around the outside because the front foot of an ox is uniform in this outer surface. This one here is a hind shoe, and you can see that from here back it's much straighter than this one. Has a little bit of a turn in on the sides there, but it's much straighter from there back. Also, this is pounded out a little bit more, so it drives the cork off to the outside, so that the ox don't roll under on this hind meat. This one is more central in the middle of the shoe. This one, as you can see, is more to the outside. Front corks are pretty much the same. Again, I like to turn the front cork of a hind shoe off a little bit more, and for the front foot is more in center. Now for the hind shoes, I want the shape of the blanks to be a little bit different. From here to about here, I want that cork to be turned in a little bit more, and from here back I want it to be a little bit straighter than the front shoes. Front shoes has a nice uniform curve, where the hind shoes are a little bit straighter from this section back because the hoof is not as curved as they are in the front. Now you see I have a little bit of a curve here, but from here back it's fairly straight. I have this filled out fairly well. This area wants to be pounded out quite a bit so that this is forced over to the outside of the shoe. That leaves the cork to the outside of the hoof and it won't roll under. Okay, now we have blanks with shoes all made up. I got two sets over on the apron, and now before I punch the holes into them, I like to punch some holes in there so I know exactly where to punch my shoes in. So this one here, I go back a little bit from the cork and about the same distance from the outer edge there, and I make a little divot there, come back a little bit to about there, have the next nail hole down here about 1.5 inches from the very end. This is a 5-inch shoe. Now I'll split the difference between this hole and that hole. Split the difference between those shoes. And finally between those shoes. Do the same on this side. Come down a bit from the edge of the cork crease. About that far in. Make a divot. Over here. Make one about that far away, come down to the bottom, make another one, split the difference again, and finally with this one here. So these are going to be 5-inch shoes with 6 holes per shoe. extremely cold here this morning, so my fingers are cold and it's hard to hang on to the pritchel. But as we get going here, we'll get warmed up. So now we're going to proceed to punching holes and turning the corks up, and we'll go on to that. And get late.